first. So we're all part of the same system, so to speak. But what we try to do for whatever the tomorrows are going to bring becomes very personal. It becomes personal once it comes home. And as you said, I got kind of a personal question. What we try to do is help people understand the dynamics that once he comes home is when we take the generic out of the system, the regional center, the education system. And what we try to then do is bring it personal, because all of our families are very unique in how we ultimately have to plan for whatever the tomorrows may be. And the tomorrows are going to be here at some point in time. Second. First, what I'd like to really do is introduce myself. My name is Grady Jennings, and I have a company in Ontario called the Dignity Group. We call it Dignity Group Ontario. But the bottom line is that what we have is an organization that we try to help families understand what we call the economic and legal aspects of having a child with special needs, whether that's a baby child or an adult child, because we all have different ages and ranges of what we're trying to get accomplished, and different things have different impacts at different times. So Jess Block, who's a very dear friend of mine, has a 3-year-old child with autism. Here we have 29 years old. My son is 19 years old. So the things that she faces as a parent, we've kind of already gone through, and we've come to different realities, different learning tools, whatever the case might be. We're all at different places within our lives based on the ages and the circumstances of our lives and that of our children. What I'm going to try to do very much tonight is not make this commercial for Dignity Group and what we do. Our job, in my mind, is to really help families, empower them with information, to really take a look at the importance of trying to prepare for the days that we don't really want to think about. And the problem is that those days are reality. Some of the things that you'll hear tonight are going to be very personal. The bottom line that we look out of it is that we have to take a look, because we get caught up in a lot of our emotions, don't we? And our emotions play all kinds of games with our minds. We live in a world that basically says that we're supposed to live to 150 years old, and never die. We live in a world that says that basically we have that one little quiet prayer that says, let me live one day longer than my child, because we're so fearful of what that tomorrow is. And again, raising my son now by myself for the last 3 years and turning 50 years old there in August, or last August, all of a sudden certain things came a little bit more clearer to the forefront. And it got actually a lot muddier. And the thing that's really, so my sensitivity to what we do in here is strong. And my world is the same world as a lot of us live in, the fears, the scares, the emotions. And the bottom line is that what we try to do as much as we can is that our goal realistically is to understand your world. But all of us are going to bring different emotions to the table. As Jenny and Grace have known, as I've gone through this last year with a lot of different decision makings as it relates to my son, dealt with a lot of emotional issues, dealt with a lot of guilt issues. And the bottom line is that what did I have to do? I had to really rely on people who did not have my emotions tied to my situations and tied to my scenarios to help me have a better view, because I was so blurry that it was incredible. Okay. Now, in this room, how many of us are eligible for health insurance just because of who we happen to be? If you were out of work tomorrow, is anybody going to call you and just say, hey, let me give you a check? Beyond unemployment. Is anybody going to turn around and say, hey, let me go ahead and provide that health insurance for you? Or for you? It's not out there, is it? Okay? But that's the right that our children have. So that's when we start talking about those entitlement programs. That's their right, and that's what they are entitled to. So I sit back and say, okay, they're entitled to income, they're entitled to health insurance. Now what I want to do is I want to tie my personal planning into my son's planning. Because, bottom line, these are all benefits while he's alive, right? I can control how much money he has while I'm alive and while he's alive. So I can make sure he's going to be below $2,000. But now let's take a look at what happens in my world. Okay? I have 2 other daughters. Not 2 other daughters. I have 2 daughters and my son James. My 2 daughters, my oldest one is 38 years old, and my middle child is 31 years old. And I know I told you guys I was 50 years old, and you're trying to figure out how I did that math. Huh? I'm going to typically, traditionally, name each of my children as equal beneficiaries. So what's going to happen is that I'm now gone. Each of my 2 daughters are going to get what? They're each going to, all 3 of my kids are going to get $100,000. What's going to happen is that my daughters can do what with their money? Anything they want. Well, what happens when James gets his $100,000? Because what's going to happen is that he's going to lose these benefits until his $100,000 is what? Down below $2,000. So I ask myself the question is that, right now the Social Security check is worth about $900 a month. If I can even get health insurance, what's the value of that? What's the value of the housing? Because we're dealing with potential economic benefits. Real money at $900 a month. Health insurance? What's the cost of medical care? What's the cost of housing if we have to pay for it ourselves? Look at all of us and what we pay or don't pay. But all of a sudden, I tried to do something right by buying a life insurance policy, which was good because it protected my family if something happened to me. But the bottom line is that the way I structured it and the way I set it up was going to be problematic for the one person I'm trying to protect and fight for, my son. Our sons, our kids. What happens if this, all of a sudden, maybe my daughter's two children have some major health issues. My daughter needs money. What happens if my daughter all of a sudden and her husband, who I like now, it's questionable for a while. What happens if all of a sudden he comes home and says, I want a divorce? What happens to that $100,000 or $200,000? My daughter gets what? Half of it, theoretically. Who gets the other half? My son-in-law. Not my son.